-23 degrees the morning my uncle left my grandmother on my doorstep. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. -23, with the wind chill pushing it closer to -30. And she was standing there in her house slippers, the fleece ones with a little rubber grip on the bottom, holding a grocery bag in each hand, and wearing the same cardigan she'd had on at Christmas dinner 2 weeks earlier. I didn't know she was there at first. I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the Ring doorbell my boyfriend had installed last fall. I almost ignored it. A cat, probably, or the neighbour's kid cutting through the driveway again. But something made me look. The timestamp read 6:47 a.m. I saw her silhouette on the screen and dropped my mug. She was 81 years old. She had arthritis in both knees and a heart condition that meant she took 7 different medications every morning with a full glass of water. And she was standing outside my door in the dark, in January in Winnipeg, because her own son had driven her there, set her bags on the step, and left. I have the footage. I will always have the footage. I got her inside and wrapped her in the blanket from the couch before I even said anything. Her hands were like ice. She kept apologizing. That was the part that broke me, honestly. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I didn't want to make a fuss." 81 years old, hypothermic, abandoned on a doorstep before sunrise, and she was apologizing to me. I sat across from her with my own hands shaking and let her warm up before I asked anything. Her name is Lorraine, my grandmother. She raised 4 kids, buried 1 husband, taught Sunday school for 30 years, and still makes the best butter tarts in the province. She is not the kind of woman who complains. She is not the kind of woman who asks for help, which is exactly why when she finally looked at me and said, "I think something bad has been happening with my money," I knew it was worse than I was ready for. I need to go back a little. My mum passed away 4 years ago. Cancer, fast, brutal, the kind that doesn't give you time to say everything you need to say. After that, it was just my uncle and me in terms of close family. He's my mum's younger brother. He'd always been the charming one, the one with the big ideas and the easy smile, the one who showed up at family dinners and made everyone laugh and then disappeared for months at a time. My mum used to say he had a good heart, but no follow-through. When my grandmother started slowing down a few years ago, moving more carefully, getting confused with some of her bills, needing more help around the house, my uncle stepped in. Or he said he stepped in. He moved her out of her bungalow in the North End and into an apartment closer to his place in St. Vital. He told her it was more practical. He told her it would be safer. He told everyone, including me, that he had it handled. I believed him. I lived 40 minutes away. I was working full-time as a dental hygienist, and I told myself that as long as Grandma seemed okay, I didn't need to insert myself into her living arrangements. That's the thing guilt does. It reframes your passivity as respect for boundaries. I've had a lot of time to sit with that. I visited when I could, once a month, sometimes more. She always seemed fine, a little quieter than she used to be maybe, a little less likely to bring up old stories. But she was warm, and she was clean, and she said she was okay, so I let myself believe it. The first sign I actually registered came about 8 months before that January morning. I took her out to lunch at a Vietnamese place on Pembina she likes. Phao and spring rolls, same as always. When the bill came, she reached for her purse out of habit, and I waved her off. But she got a strange look on her face, almost panicked, and said, "I should be treating you. I used to be able to treat you." I laughed it off at the time, told her she paid for enough meals over the years. But it stuck with me. She'd been a careful saver her whole life. She had a CPP, her OAS, a small pension from the school board where she'd worked as a secretary for 20 years before retiring. It wasn't a fortune, but it was comfortable. She owned her bungalow outright when she sold it. My uncle had handled the sale. I started paying closer attention after that lunch. I noticed she never talked about her bank account anymore. She used to mention small things, picking up a gift for a neighbour, donating to the church rummage sale. The small casual mentions of money that meant she felt in control of her own finances. Those stopped when I asked once if she needed anything. she said. Your uncle takes care of all that, in a tone that didn't invite follow-up. I started writing things down, dates, things she said, things I noticed. I don't know exactly what instinct drove me to do that, but I'm glad I listened to it. Then came January. After she warmed up and had tea and some toast, she told me what had happened the night before. She and my uncle had argued, one of the only times she could remember raising her voice at him in years. She had asked to see her bank statements. She'd asked before, she said, and he'd always reassured her that everything was fine, that he was managing it, that she didn't need to worry. But this time she insisted. She'd seen an envelope with her bank's logo sitting on his counter, and she wanted to look at it. He told her she was being paranoid. She told him it was her money in her account and she had a right to see it. He drove her to my house at 6 in the morning and left her on the step. I called 911 that morning. I know that surprises people. Most of us don't think of calling the police when it's family, when it feels like a private matter, when we're still not sure exactly what we're dealing with. But a woman in her 80s had just been left outside in dangerous cold with no notice and no plan, and I had it on camera. The officer who came was kind. She took a report. She told me about Adult Protective Services and said I should contact them as well. I did, that same afternoon. That was the day things started moving. The APS worker who was assigned to my grandmother's case was thorough in a way I was deeply grateful for. She met with Grandma privately, assessed her, and confirmed what I had already suspected. My grandmother was cognitively sharp. She knew exactly what year it was, who the Prime Minister was, what medications she took, and why. What she didn't know, what she hadn't been allowed to know, was the state of her own finances. What we found, with the help of a lawyer I found through the Law Society of Manitoba's referral service, was staggering. My grandmother's checking account, into which her CPP and OAS were deposited every month, had been nearly emptied. Over 2 years, withdrawals and transfers had moved just over $94,000 out of her accounts. There had been an ATM card issued in my uncle's name as a secondary cardholder. There had been 2 transfers to an account we traced back to my uncle's wife. Her TFSA, the one she'd been building for 30 years, had been partially liquidated. She hadn't known any of it. He'd been paying her rent, buying her groceries, managing her prescriptions, and presenting himself to anyone who asked as a devoted, hands-on caregiver. He was also stealing from her. I've thought a lot about the particular cruelty of that combination. The care wasn't fake exactly. He did do those things, but it was designed to maintain access. It was designed to keep her dependent and compliant and grateful. The kindness was the cover. My uncle called me 3 days after I filed the APS report. I let it go to voicemail the first time. The second time I answered. He was calm at first, reasonable sounding. He said I had overreacted, that Grandma had misunderstood what was happening with her finances, that he was going to sit down with her and explain everything. He said the family didn't need to involve lawyers or social workers. He said, and I wrote this down word for word, because I had put him on speaker the moment I realised where the conversation was going. You're going to blow up this whole family over a misunderstanding, and when Grandma's gone, you're going to regret it. I let him finish. Then I told him that I had the ring footage of him leaving her in -23, that I had filed a report with both the police and Adult Protective Services, that a lawyer was reviewing her financial records, and that if he wanted to discuss the matter further, he could do so through her legal representative. He hung up. My aunt, his wife, called the next day. She cried. She said she had no idea about the transfers into her account and that she would pay everything back immediately if it would make this go away. I told her that it wasn't my call anymore and that she should speak to a lawyer. I will tell you honestly that those conversations were among the hardest things I've ever done. Not because I doubted myself, I didn't, but because I kept thinking about the version of him I'd known at Christmas dinners and summer barbecues, the uncle who taught me to play cribbage and drove me to the airport at 4 in the morning when I needed him to. Grief is complicated. You can know someone has done something unforgivable and still grieve the person you thought they were. Grandma moved into my second bedroom the day after the APS visit. I'd already had it in my mind that she wasn't going back to that apartment. But I called her and asked, properly asked, sat across from her and told her she didn't have to do anything she didn't want to do. And she said she'd like to stay, if I was sure it wasn't too much trouble. It is not too much trouble. It is absolutely not too much trouble. The legal process took about 5 months in total. My uncle did not initially cooperate, which surprised no one. His lawyer argued that the financial activity had been authorised, which was difficult to prove because there had been a period, early on, when my grandmother had signed some documents she now said she hadn't fully understood. This is the part I want people to hear. This is how elder financial abuse works in Canada. It happens gradually. It often starts with genuine caregiving, and by the time the exploitation is underway, the paper trail has been carefully constructed to look like consent. What helped us, my grandmother was assessed and found fully capable of making her own financial decisions. The authorization he relied on turned out to be a general power of attorney she'd signed when she moved into the apartment, which does not, under Manitoba law, give a POA holder unlimited discretion to transfer funds for their own benefit. The lawyer was clear about this. The transfers were not legal. My uncle ultimately agreed to a civil settlement that required full restitution, the entire $94,000 paid in installments, with a structured repayment schedule enforced by a court order. He also faced a condition that he have no further involvement in my grandmother's finances. The criminal investigation is ongoing. I can't speak to where that stands, but I was told it was being treated seriously. He lost a lot of other things without anyone having to take them. His reputation in the neighbourhood, his standing at the Legion, where he'd been a member for years. When people found out, and in a city like Winnipeg, people find out, the social cost was real and immediate. I didn't orchestrate any of that. It happened on its own. Grandma now has her own bank account, her own debit card, and the financial power of attorney that she chose herself, a woman she knows from her old church community, someone she trusts. She reviews her own statements every month. Last fall, she treated me to lunch at the Vietnamese place. Pho and spring rolls. She paid, and she didn't look panicked about it. She looked like herself. She's been sleeping better. I didn't realize how much she wasn't sleeping until she started sleeping properly again. Some mornings I come downstairs and she's already made coffee and is sitting by the window watching the birds at the feeder she asked me to hang in the backyard. She's teaching me how to make her butter tarts. I've made 4 batches and they still aren't as good as hers, and she finds this genuinely funny. I get asked sometimes by friends, by the APS worker who checked in on us a few times, even by a few people who know the situation, whether I feel guilty, whether I feel like I destroyed the family. I don't feel guilty. I feel like I was too slow, and that's different. I feel like I should have asked harder questions earlier, should have trusted the instinct that said something was wrong instead of waiting for it to become undeniable. That's the thing I would tell anyone who reads this and recognizes something familiar in it. You were probably not wrong. If something feels off, it usually is. Write things down. Ask to see the accounts. Call someone. You don't have to be certain before you act. My uncle has not contacted me since the settlement. I don't expect him to. Grandma asked me once, about 2 months after she moved in, whether I thought she should reach out to him, whether it was wrong to cut off her own son. She said it the way she says difficult things, quietly, looking at her hands, like she was afraid of the answer. I told her that was entirely her choice and that I would support her either way. She was quiet for a minute. Then she said, I think I need a little more time. That was 14 months ago. She hasn't reached out. I haven't pushed it in either direction. What I know is this. She is warm. She is safe. Her money is hers again, and the birds come to the feeder every morning. Some days that has to be enough. Most days when I see her sitting by that window with her coffee, it is more than enough. It is everything. The morning I saw my grandmother on that ring screen, standing in her fleece slippers in -23, holding 2 grocery bags, I didn't think about justice or consequences or any of that. I just ran to the door. But looking back now, I think that moment was the result of everything that had been building for years. Not fate, not luck, Just the slow, quiet accumulation of choices. His, mine, hers, finally arriving at a doorstep before sunrise. My uncle made choices, small ones at first, probably. A withdrawal here, a transfer there, telling himself it was temporary, or that he'd earned it somehow, that he was doing the hard work of showing up. And then the choices got bigger because the small ones had gone unchallenged. And by the time Grandma asked to see her own bank statement, $94,000 had disappeared and he had nowhere left to go except to drive her to my house and leave her in the cold. That's what unchecked dishonesty does. It doesn't stay small. It compounds the same way interest does, until the debt is too large to hide. What I've thought about more, though, is what it actually took to get through those 5 months. People assume it was anger that carried me. It wasn't. Anger was there in the beginning, sharp and useful, but it burns out fast. What lasted was something quieter. The decision to keep thinking clearly even when I was exhausted, to keep asking the right questions even when the answers were painful, to not let the noise of family pressure or guilt or, maybe I'm wrong, drown out what I knew to be true, keeping my head when everyone around me was either defending him or urging me to let it go. That was the harder work. And then there's the part I'm still most honest with myself about. I was slow. I saw the signs before that January morning. The panicked look at the lunch table, the way she stopped mentioning small purchases, the way she said your uncle takes care of all that, like it was a door closing. I wrote things down which helped. But I waited longer than I should have to act on what I already knew. There's a version of this story where I ask harder questions 6 months earlier, and $94,000 is still sitting in her account. I try not to live in that version, but I don't pretend it doesn't exist either. That's the part of this I'd most want someone else to hear. Not the resolution, but the delay before it. Trust what you're noticing. Don't wait for certainty you may never get. Grandma is at the kitchen table right now as I write this. She's got her reading glasses on and she's doing the crossword from yesterday's paper because she likes to give herself a head start. She asked me this morning if I wanted her to pick up milk when she walks to the corner store later. Not, is it okay if I go? Not, would that be too much trouble? Just, do you need milk? That's what I was actually fighting for. Not the money, though. The money mattered. Not even the legal outcome, though that mattered too. I was fighting for the version of her that says yes when she wants to say yes and no when she wants to say no. The version that doesn't apologize for existing. She's got that back now. That was always worth whatever it cost.